We're here in Las Vegas to kick off Geo-RoadTrip 2014. Boulder City was intentionally created by the 6 companies to house many, many thousands of people that came from all over the United States in order to help construct Hoover Dam. It was a center of activity for the operation. In order to build Hoover Dam, the entire site had to be blasted clear, as well as the bedrock. Precambrian metamorphic rocks had to be blasted until they were completely out of the weathered zone. That way they could be sure that the concrete would have a good seal with the bedrock itself. One of the coolest things about Valley of Fire State Park are these giant red rock formations. This is the Aztec Formation. It's a Triassic to Jurassic aged sandstone that was during the age of the dinosaurs. And this rock was formed from a giant dune sea. So dunes like you would find in Saudi Arabia or in the Sahara Desert today. And the wind was blowing these giant dunes of sand across this valley, and these rocks were eventually preserved as this very thick, clean sandstone. You can see lots of wavy bedded things in here, and those are actually the different surfaces of the dunes as they migrated back and forth across this valley. One question that I had was, why are there so many holes in this rock? The way to explain this is, think about when you go to the beach. At the beach you're walking along and there's a lot of, when you get close to the water, there's a lot of water that squishes up between your toes when you're walking down the beach. That's because sandstones, the grains within a sandstone have lots of spaces in between that can hold water. That water sometimes dissolves minerals, and it can flow through sandstones in zones that are more porous and permeable to water, or allowing it to flow through. As it flows through, sometimes it deposits minerals in little balls called nodules. And sometimes as they grow, they can get big, fracture, and fall out. So one of the theories for these holes is that they start when water is flowing through the rock, creating these nodules and making a zone of weakness. Well, I've stopped and gotten water, so now we're going to head out to one of the hottest places in North America, Death Valley, California. See what kind of geologic wonders we can find in the summer heat. Death Valley is known for its extreme heat. In 1913, it got as hot as 134 degrees Fahrenheit here. That's really hot. Before about 3 million years ago, when the deepest part of Death Valley, Badwater Basin, started to subside, there was a giant lake here in Death Valley. And that lake was surrounded by active volcanoes. Matter of fact, much of the volcanic ash erupted in those volcanoes would fall back into the lake and mix with silts and clays to form what's called the Furnace Creek Formation, which is the bright yellow badlands that you see behind me. Two minerals in that ash are colemanite and ulexite, which are commonly known as borax. In this area, for years dating back to the late 1800s, has been known as the area where borax was extensively mined. As a matter of fact, you may have heard the term the 20 Mule Team borax. That was coined here in Death Valley, as it took large 20-mule team carriages to haul the borax out and back to local cities. As you walk up arroyos like Golden Canyon, which are common in the Southwest, remember to watch out for flash floods. When it does rain, which is infrequent, water can come pouring down these gullies carrying large boulders of rock. It can be quite dangerous. All of that rock eventually ends up into the valley and helps to fill those low places. Death Valley's been inundated with water a number of times. As a matter of fact, glaciers melting in the Sierras used to fill up Death Valley. And when that water would get cut off and evaporate, it would leave by all of those salts. Out here in the deepest part, Badwater Basin, we've got multitude of salt crystals and mud. All of that mud is now desiccated or dried up, and it cracks into these hexagonal mud crack shapes. And there's jagged salt crystals that have formed on most sides of these mud chunks. Makes for very hard hiking. And in addition to 120-degree heat here in July, it's just not a place you'd want to be normally. And that's why it's called the Devil's Golf Course. So imagine you're out here playing. We're here at Badwater, lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, 282 feet below sea level. The white area you see behind me is called a salt flat. It's evaporitic minerals like gypsum, halite, and potassium-related minerals that are left behind when waters that have flooded this part, the lowest part of Death Valley, evaporate and leave the minerals behind. The Alabama Hills are famous for being a Hollywood location for many old westerns. Over 150 films have been filmed here throughout the years, including some more recent movies like Iron Man and Transformers 2. The granite boulders here at Alabama Hills actually have almost a hollow sound to them. They're highly weathered. And the way these granites weather is the more unstable minerals in the granite, the more mafic minerals, the dark colored minerals, they dissolve and basically turn into clays which wash away, leaving behind these grains which you can pick out with your fingers, which are grains of quartz and feldspar. Those feldspars eventually break down further and form clays and silts that make up a lot of the dirt around our feet, and eventually only a pile of sand will be left over from all of this granite. And then sand will end up down at the beach somewhere along the California coastline in a few thousand million years. The high peaks of the Sierra Nevada are really high because they're really young, and they've only recently been uplifted by upwelling heat from deep within the Earth's crust. Now, the many peaks of the Sierra Nevada have eroded off of what scientists call a batholith. A batholith was a giant piece of igneous rock that cooled and covers almost a sixth of the state of California. It's extremely large. One place to see the minerals that have been mined right here around Death Valley and Lone Pine is right here at the Lone Pine Rock Shop. There are lots of minerals and rocks for you to see from all over the world, and right here in Inyo County as well. Day 3 of our trip, and we're headed south out of Lone Pine. On our way, we're going to try and see a fossilized waterfall. some more canyons, the San Andreas Fault, and today we'll finally end up in Los Angeles. We're here at Fossil Falls, just north of Ridgecrest, California. Fossil Falls sits at the southern end of the Owens Lake Valley. And many thousands of years ago, volcanoes started erupting in this part of the valley. All of these basalt flows originated from these volcanoes. At the same time, massive glaciers over that period of time started forming in the Sierra Nevada mountains and would entreat upon the valley and melt and create massive lakes. The ancient Owens River flowed down this valley, and occasionally from time to time a volcano would erupt and block its passage with a large basalt flow. It resulted in a giant waterfall as that river spilled over. But today you can see the results of the interaction between that water and the basalt. Pretty fascinating place. The basalts here at Fossil Falls are great examples of the power of water. Here you can see some basalts at the top of the falls where water was pouring over the edge. You'll see that all of the basalts are shiny and have been ground down into very smooth shapes. Matter of fact, there are patterns within the basalt showing where the water was flowing. In addition, you'll see a lot of these little round holes called potholes. And the idea behind potholes is that somewhere nearby, probably Red Hill, there was a cinder cone that spat out pumice, or a large piece of rock, and it landed here. So as water flows by, it spun in a circle there and actually dug out these perfectly circular holes called potholes. And eventually those holes will interconnect with one another, and they create this fabric of very weird and odd and unusual shapes. It's a testament to the power of erosion, even in one of the hardest rocks, basalt. The Brea Tar Pits here under Los Angeles are a testament to just how much petroleum is found under the surface of California. In fact, a lot of those petroleum reserves have found their way to the surface through their many faults and fractures created by the San Andreas. The hot thermal fluids bring the oil up to the surface and create seeps or pits such as these full of tar, and have been capturing animals, large and small, for thousands of years. These seeps date back to around 40,000 years ago, and they contain bones of everything from woolly mammoth to saber-toothed tigers, and birds, lizards, turtles, etc., etc. One thing you won't find here are dinosaur bones. Unfortunately, these tar pits are much, much too young. The dinosaurs were long extinct by the time these pits formed. We started off in Vegas looking at the Basin and Range, Hoover Dam, the Valley of Fire, and went to Death Valley and looked at more Basin and Range, and then the eastern flank of the Sierra Nevada, and ended up here, like many people do, in Hollywood.